welcome to the virtual Sunday service, for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman. Our fellowship walks diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united in our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all beings and the obligation to express our faith through acts of social justice and compassion. We welcome you to our service. My name is Jim Price. I've been an active member of this congregation since 2019, and I've been a Unitarian since 2012. Our opening words today are provided by the Unitarian Judith Quarles. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are a part of a greater community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. We light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. Our speaker today is our own minister, the Reverend Pat Jobe. Pat is a 27-year veteran of the pastoral ministry. He is an author and co-author of 6 books and did commentary as a volunteer for WNCW for 17 years in a feature that was known as Free Bubba, Radio Free Bubba. I would have loved to have heard it. Pat has a number of songs and sermons on YouTube. Reverend Pat is a foster parent of 2 young people and has 4 other children and 2 granddaughters. Pat hosted the Connection Independent Television for 15 episodes, a program that was distributed nationally by Free Speech Television and can be seen on YouTube. He was arrested twice for protesting South Carolina's failure to provide Medicaid expanded coverage to poor people, and he went 8 days in 2014 without solid food, protesting mountaintop removal in West Virginia. Reverend Jobe's partner of 12 years is Gabriel Rismeyer. The 2 live with a dog and a cat. He is an award-winning journalist, has worked in industrial sales on the factory floor, and as a delivery man. For 40 years, primarily as a volunteer, Pat has been an ally of battered women and their children. He currently serves as the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman and All Souls Community in Rutherford County, North Carolina. He is quite a catch for us. His sermon today is called Notice the Joy. And this is his description. While there is a new phrase going around downing toxic positivity, there is a lot to be said for noticing the joy. Life can be a drudgery at times. The joyless repetition of an unloved task can tip us over the edge. Another day in paradise has been appropriated by cynics who want to complain. As George Bernard Shaw said, that the world will not dedicate itself to making us happy. Still, the sun comes up, and we can perhaps craft a little more of the work we want to live in by noticing what brings us joy. One thing that brings me joy is hearing Reverend Pat speak. Let's welcome our Reverend Pat Jobe.
Joy is often surprising. An unexpected gift in wrapping paper, or the gift of a phone call or a visit from a dear friend or family member, a personal card or letter in the mail, a fun meme on Facebook or in an email, an unusually scrumptious meal or dessert. One favorite drawing of two men shipwrecked on the classic tiny island, barely enough room for the two of them to stand under the one classic palm tree. But strangely enough, all around their feet are servings of pies and cakes and cookies and bowls of ice cream. And the caption on the drawing reads, "Lucky for us, this cartoonist didn't know how to spell." Just in case you missed it, they were not stranded on a desert island, but rather on a desert island. I'm so glad this is the last video morning message for a while. It's tough to tell a joke to a video camera. As much as joy is its own reward, we would do well to notice when joy connects to our service to others. This is a theme I've touched on in the past, and I will touch on again in the future. Pride, a sense of obligation, loyalty, friendship, desire to please another, all of those things may motivate us to the joyous repetition of an unloved task. But those aren't likely to go the distance or have the best outcome. If you really want to do some good, have a lasting impact through the particular form of your service, find something you enjoy doing. Did Martin Luther King fear for his life? Certainly, yes. And at 39 years old, he faced his fears realized. But up until that moment, even up until the night before he was killed, when he made that remarkable prediction of his assassination, he called us to our better angels with a voice that rang with the joy of how good it felt to tell the truth. You can hear the same joy of telling the truth, as hard as that truth is sometimes to tell, when you listen to the leader of 350.org, the climate change group that is led by writer and activist Bill McKibben. He teaches at Middleburg College in Vermont, drives an electric car, and speaks out about the ongoing climate crisis with a warm and personable and joyous voice. It's not an easy thing to do when challenging the power structure and pointing out the damage we continue to do by burning fossil fuels and polluting the air. Let me tell you a story about something Bill McKibben did just a few years ago. A report came out that the executives at Exxon had known about climate change since the early 70s and had hidden the fact from the public. Just as tobacco executives knew about lung cancer and other ill effects of their product, and sugar processors knew about the mass poisoning their products were inflicting for decades, this report on Exxon revealed the horrifying truth that the foxes had been in the henhouse of climate change for decades before the general public was told. When this news broke, McKibben went down to the local Exxon station and held up a sign begging people to shop elsewhere. He effected a one-man, one-day boycott of a local station. Maybe some of you are thinking that didn't do much good or damage Exxon in any way. But let me tell you what McKibben did after that one-man, one-day boycott. He walked into that little store in his neighborhood and he paid that man out of his own pocket for the business he lost personally in that one day. Although many of you are hearing this story for the first time, please know that the story was reported through a number of media outlets. And this balding, bespectacled professor and prophet touched the hearts of millions of people, not only with his outrage at Exxon for hiding these facts for decades, but also with his soft-spoken kindness to his neighbor. to the man with whom he had done business for years. We lose a great deal when we paint our opponents as idiots. Mark Twain quipped many years ago that in all matters of opinion, all our opponents are idiots. He meant by that quip to point out that there are idiots on both sides, and we would do well to be careful of dehumanizing anybody. Anger, frustration, fear, and dismay are all legitimate emotions, and we would do well to own them and feel them fully. But even as we own them and feel them fully, we would do well to keep looking for the joy that can be found as we go about our business, as we go about our service to others. What makes you feel good? I hope gathering with this congregation makes you feel good. I hope you feel good that people like us exist. I hope you feel good that on June 10th, we're going to feed the homeless and other poor people in Mooresville at Feed NC. Wasn't it great on May 2nd when we heard Lisa Garcia Sampson tell us there are 5,000 of us in North Carolina? And when you add in the Quakers, the Mennonites, the United Church of Christ, and a few who embrace liberal theology throughout other congregations, you realize there might even be more of us than there are of them. I know that's hard to believe, but it might be true. We may well be small, but we're feisty. And I hope to goodness that feels very good to you. Feeling good is such a ticket to finding joy, noticing joy, connecting joy to our positions on social issues and our liberal religious life. Let me delineate for you what liberal religious life like ours is. We have the freedom to disagree about even the most fundamental religious ideas. God or no God, Jesus or no Jesus, Buddha or no Buddha. Our liberal religious tradition holds, especially in the sacred Southland, that we can embrace all kinds of people. One of my Christian friends reminded me just this week that the traditional stories about Jesus include people who were not Jews. This was radical and off-putting to so many of his critics. He associated with women, tax collectors, Canaanites, and Samaritans, all of whom were not members of the local country club, all of whom were outside normal social circles of good Jews like Jesus. In one story, it sounds like he was pushing back against a Canaanite woman who was asking for help. When he says, "We don't throw bread to dogs," Jesus probably did not say it with a Western North Carolina accent, but he said, "We don't throw bread to dogs." The woman replied, "Even dogs can eat crumbs that fall on the floor from the table." And then at that point, he helped her. Sometimes the targets of our social action, the poor, the imprisoned, the LGBTQ, the recently marginalized, the immigrants, and the undocumented, feel like those who are forced to eat the crumbs that fall from the table. But don't doubt for a second that our liberal religious tradition insists there is room at the welcome table for everybody, as we were told so beautifully by Laurie Walker. on May 2nd. We get overwhelmed sometimes by the grim realities of those forced to eat crumbs, even here in Mecklenburg, Iredell, Gaston, and Cabarrus counties. But anything we do to soften the blows, to lighten the loads, and bring them to the welcome table will be 10 times as effective as we do these things with joy. Joy, joy, joy. When I hear about Jesus inviting the outcasts, I think he must have been a wonderful Unitarian back in the day. One lady was asked if Unitarians deny the divinity of Jesus, and her companion said, "Oh Lord, no, honey, we don't deny anybody's divinity." To find joy in life takes work and play. Personally, I like to play. Some of you may have picked up on that. We have to be careful of arrogance because it is a well-established fact that Unitarian Universalists are smarter than the average bear. Years ago, the people who administer the SAT scores excluded us from their reports on which religious groups scored the highest because our sample is so small and because our kids knocked the tops out of the scores. Somebody asked me once what I liked least about being a UU minister, and I had to admit that most of you are smarter than I am. You can conjugate your verbs better than I can, and most of you know how to find the hypotenuse of a right triangle. My spell checker just informed me that I can spell neither conjugate nor hypotenuse, but they are sure fun words to say. Conjugate, hypotenuse. So there it is. We are called to serve in joy. We serve best when we are enjoying ourselves. If we serve out of pride, obligations, promises made in the heat of the moment, or manipulations dragged out of us by some clever manipulator, our service will be lukewarm and halfway. Another descriptive word that applies here is half-cocked. Any of you who have ever fired a gun know that they rarely work half-cocked. But if we serve in joy, our service takes on the hue of a sunrise and a sunset, beauty and the sheen on a lake. I loved it when we were at Jim Price's house for our April 25th service, and the roomy quote I shared included a reference to the sheen on the lake. I loved it. There it was, the sheen on the lake. Sometimes we ministers hit a sweet spot like that. I once quoted the Beatles song, "Let It Be," at the close of a sermon. The guys in the sound booth played "Let It Be" as the congregation filed out. When I caught up with them later, I sang their praises. "You guys got that song up pretty fast." They said we had it queued up before we ever heard one word of your sermon. When stuff like that happens, I get to thinking the Canaanite woman got the drop on Jesus. She made it clear that even dogs deserve a few crumbs. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing the oneness at the heart of everything that might bring us all to the welcome table. Let's come together. Come together. Another great Beatles song. Let's continue to follow our 7 principles, especially that one that affirms the welcome table needs to be set for everybody because everybody has inherent worth and dignity. But finally and fundamentally, let's only do those things that bring us at least a little joy, a little fun, a little spring in our step. It looks like we now have enough volunteers to fix that monthly meal for the homeless and other poor folks at Feed NC in Mooresville. We have plenty of other opportunities to sit at the welcome table and maybe even cook and clean up after. Edward Everett Hale said, "I only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." Claudia Perkinson said pretty much the same thing when she volunteered to cook for the homeless. The author of A Man Without a Country, one of the seminal writers and thinkers of the 19th century, Everett Hale, was not one of those. He was not only one of those iconic spinners of great stories, but also a man who could conjugate a verb and find the hypotenuse of a right triangle. He was, of course, a Unitarian minister.
Greetings, everyone. Oh yes, trying to find the joy through a long, hard winter. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. Sun, 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 here it comes. 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 Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. It's alright. Find the joy. Take care.
Thank you, Pat, for your guidance, experience, and wisdom this morning. We always enjoy what you have to say, and we enjoy discussing it with you in the talkback time, coffee and conversation at 11. So we look forward to talking to you today, Pat, and thank you again for your service to us and for your message today. And now for a few announcements. If you're a visitor, welcome. I'm so pleased that you chose to join us today and give our virtual service a try. If you like what you've heard so far and are wondering how to stay connected or get involved with our congregation, please reach out to our membership chair, Linda Heidenberg, whose name and contact information should be on the screen. Her email address should be noticeable. For members, we're not passing around a basket, but we would appreciate you keeping your pledges current. So we're ready to resume full speed when time to resume normal services. We will put the address for pledges in the next newsletter. And speaking of services, in June, we're going to have 2 live services. One will be June 13th at Sandy and Marge's house. You'll get more notice of that. And then on June 27th, we'll be back at my house for a live service with Reverend Pat. And we'll have Zoom in the other 2 services in June. and we're working toward the time when we'll be back together. So let's remember that we will be back together one of these days. We encourage you, though, in the meantime, to continue reaching out to one another virtually whenever possible. Make regular visits by talking with folks and just checking in to make sure things are going right. We're also having discussions about maybe bringing back the movie group, which was a very popular event before the pandemic. It is important for us to reach out to make sure that members know that we think about them and we care about what's happening in their lives. We are beginning to come out of the darkness, but we've been through something this past year. The old saying is, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Well, we should be pretty doggone strong. Okay, that's about it for today. We had a very good service, and we're going to have a good coffee and conversation coming up now. So now, go in peace. Go and conquer the day. I hope that it'll be a good day for you and a good week. Namaste. Blessed be. Go in peace.